Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fresh. My name is Nia Malika Dixon. I'm an independent writer, director, and producer here in Los Angeles. I am originally from Baltimore, and I am a Black Muslim woman. And this week we are continuing our story lab, talking about film, and we're going to be discussing the much talked about and very much controversial in my timeline on Twitter, Dune, which I watched on HBO Max. Now, just to give everybody who's new to the broadcast a little background, Fresh is our weekly broadcast where we discuss different film and TV that you can watch on various different streaming platforms. And we discuss them from the perspective of someone who loves stories, as well as a creator who is a member of a very marginalized population, Black, Muslim, and woman. And the reason why I started this broadcast was so that other creatives like myself can learn from analyzing different film and TV series that are already out there. And this is one of the ways that I learned how to polish my screenplays and to actually take note of different cinematic elements and tools that I can use as a filmmaker myself and put in my film and in the series that I created. Now, if you'd like to watch any of the projects that I've created, I have a series called The Trap, which was originally called Chrysalis, and that's streaming on our platform through Vimeo at audaz.vhx.tv. And that is a web series about a young man in Baltimore who becomes a drug dealer to take care of his kid. And one of my favorite short films that I've created is also streaming on that platform, and it was shot in Venice, and it's called City in the Sea. And it's one of my favorites, not only because of the location in Venice Beach, but also because I created it as a part of a collective of artists, and several of them were fellow actors in my acting class at the time. So the bottom line is that you can learn from top tier creative projects that are already out there, as well as through collaboration. And I just want to say that taking that acting course for those many years that I did, which I definitely enjoyed, helped me to become a better director. And it also helped me when it comes to collaborating. And, you know, that is 50% of what makes a great film project, is being able to collaborate. The other 50% is hard work. And so let's just jump right into Dune. I wanted to try to give a few moments for people to jump in on the live. Hey, welcome. Because I do this broadcast live so that we can interact. I just don't want to be a talking head. And as much as I love story and I love to talk about story, and I'm going to really enjoy talking about Dune, I do like to get your feedback. So if you have any questions, go ahead, type them in the comments. And if you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and type them in the comments, because I will come back and keep the conversation going. And if you're already following us on Twitter, or you're following me on Twitter at Nia Malika Dixon, you've probably seen me tweet out some comments about Dune, which I'm going to reiterate today. This is the third film in our series about sci-fi. And as a sci-fi film, this is the only film of the three that relies on spectacle. And if you have been watching our broadcast, you know I'm a proponent of the theory that great story comes from great character development. And the best film and TV projects are built upon great characters and those stories that come out of that. So let's start off with our main character in Dune, the protagonist, Paul. And let me just say that I may be biased, but I do like an active protagonist, okay? Because, like I said, the character drives the story. And Paul is not a very active protagonist. He's a very reluctant protagonist, number one. And number two, he's a character who doesn't necessarily know what he wants. And that doesn't make for compelling storytelling. And so just from the beginning, while watching this, even though I was mesmerized by the beautiful landscape, very well shot, the cinematography is beautiful, I was very much let down by this passiveness of our main character. But let me talk about what I did like. I did like the visuals. So it is a very visually stunning film. It is very cinematic. It is beautifully shot. It is very well scored. Hans Zimmer never disappoints. It is all of that. And it's a feast for the eyes and ears, with all the sweeping views of the desert, and even the beautiful planet, the watery planet that our main character Paul hails from. The costumes were beautiful. Like I said in my tweet, beautiful gowns. So that's what I liked about it. That's what works for it. That's what makes it cinematically a great film to go see in theaters, especially IMAX. I didn't go see it in theaters because I'm not doing that just yet. I don't want to put myself in a position where I may be contracting COVID because I'm immunocompromised. So I'm definitely not going to rush off to go to the theater. However, I'm not going to knock people who go to the theater, because even though it was very beautiful on my large screen TV, I'm sure it was even more gorgeous in the theater. I'm sure the sound was even more lush in the theater. So, but getting back to what I said at the top of this, the sci-fi definitely is dependent upon spectacle, and it's a crafted future universe, 10,000 years in the future, with this special magical sand, these mysterious indigenous people who live in it and protect it, these powerful mystical forces who are determined to control things, the Bene Gesserit, I think I said that right, I hope so. And then of course the large brutal armies that are like hell-bent on making sure that they're the only ones who get to have this spice. Now, the story itself is very thin. It feels very thin. It's heavily influenced by other cultures, and that's very obvious, and other traditions, but it's still flimsy. And so that to me is just a big standout that I, as a creative, I'm taking note of. So like, for example, if I'm crafting a sci-fi, which I am, I have a sci-fi series that I'm writing, I don't want to rely on sweeping landscapes, because I want my audience to keep coming back for the story. Story is king. So at the heart of this story, we're not really given much. You know, we have Paul and his home planet, and his father who's very noble and taking up this charge of protecting this planet of sand, Arrakis, and the sand has this mystical spice in it that definitely is something that could be a compelling story element, but it's just reduced to just one thing that everybody's after. And so like, instead of building up upon that, our filmmakers have left that as a story device, which I think is leaving great story on the table, you know. But, you know, to each his own. I do want to say, though, that this film itself is very indicative of who's telling the story. this version of this kind of story is definitely through a white male lens. It's obvious. Our main character is a white guy, and it really reeks of, white savior. And it's obvious that it's a franchise move, and it's something that, our filmmaker wants you to keep coming back for more installments. And, I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I would love it if the story could have stood on its own merit, and then the second film could have built upon that. That would have been ideal, but it's Hollywood, so. But, he set up Paul as our protagonist, as this young leader who is thrust into this position of power, and at the result of this betrayal, which is also very tropey, by the way. Yes, that character was cast accurately by an Asian actor, but that character betraying everybody is kind of tropey. So, and then Paul, he's like this pre-colonizer, and he's positioned to embed himself into this culture with the Fremen, the people who are the protectors of the spice, but it's just him protecting another culture, this white savior trope, and ultimately he's going to lead them into a war. So it's like, this is not a fresh story, and painting it with sweeping, beautiful views and draping it with lush sound is not going to change the fact that it's another white male story, and absolutely one that needs to be retired. So, as somebody who has never read the book, has never seen the first film, I tried to go back and watch the first film, but it was something that came out in 1984, so it was really difficult to watch. For all of the reasons I just spoke about this year's version of it. But also for just like bad CGI, and anyway, it was made in the past, so. But I say all that to say that this film, I would have loved for it to just stand on its own merit as a story. That would have been wonderful, but it didn't. And it had the potential to be a great story, well told, but it just fell short for me. As a storyteller, I wanted more compelling characters. I wanted a story that actually had some depth to it, other than just, young white male comes in and saves people from ultimate doom. And yeah, so that's Dune 2021, and I would love to say more about it, but I will say that I really enjoyed several of the actors. And again, sometimes you get these powerful performances, but it's not enough to uphold a story. And Rebecca Ferguson's performances were amazing, and her character was very compelling. Like, I wanted to see more interaction with regard to her story and her son, but it wasn't really delved into deeply enough for me. And then Jason Momoa's character was amazing, aside from his name. But his performance brought some energy to the film, and it made it a lot more fun. And, even his character had a lot more depth than Paul. So, yeah, that's saying a lot. Yeah, I wish I could say a lot more, but that's about it. I would recommend you watching it in theaters if you're going to theaters, because it is beautiful and it sounds lovely, and the costumes are gorgeous, and there were several actors who stood out, and that alone is a good reason to go watch it if you like cinema. If you are very much looking for a story you can sink your teeth into, I'm just going to warn you that you're not going to get that. So, but that is what happens when, sci-fi stories rely heavily on spectacle. And that's what this film does. The two previous films that we spoke about, and it's not lost on me that they're both led by Black women. And they were very powerful stories, very compelling characters, beautiful films, and they did not rely heavily on spectacle. And that, to me, is a note that you as a creative should take. That when you're creating sci-fi, make sure that you're not relying too heavily on special effects and what I like to call spectacle magic and these elements like magical sand. And so, yes, I wish I had more energy for Dune, but that's Dune 2021. Next week, we're going to move into a different genre and talk about a different kind of film, which I hope will have a story I can sink my teeth into. And to find out which film, please follow us here on Audace Entertainment and on Twitter at AUDAZTV. I'm sorry, AUDAZENT on Twitter, and Audace Entertainment here on Instagram. And then we'll see you next week. But before I go, I do want to give a shout out to all of you Black creatives out there who are making things. There are several people who I'm following on all social media platforms who are really doing a bang up job and just getting things made. And I love it. And I support you, all of you. Just keep it going. You know who you are. And if you would like to join me here on Fresh to talk about your projects, I would love to have you on here to discuss what you're making, how you're making it, as inspiration to other creatives who are doing the same thing, which is the whole reason why I started this broadcast in the first place. So I'm going to close out, and I will catch you guys next week. Shout out to all the Black creatives and the Black Muslim creatives out there who are making things. And I am going to also share my new mug, which you can get on our website, blackmuslimgirlfly.com, where you can also get this t-shirt. Because we are fly, Black Muslim creatives. All right, you guys. Next week, we're going to be talking about a more exciting film, I promise. And we're going to talk about how you as a filmmaker can get your hands on some supportive materials that can accompany these videos and help you to pump up your script, prep your film, and give you some tips and insight into your project based on all of the films and TV series that we have been highlighting. And I will see you next week. Bye.